Well, welcome back one and all to another exciting edition of Transformers Reviews. Well, everybody, today, as you know, we are taking a look at the Cybertron version of Sideways. Now, a brief little side note about this character is that this is canonically the same character that showed up in Armada and survived getting shot by Optimus Prime, only to reappear 20 years later to plague both the Autobots and later on the Decepticons. Now, with that being said, how does this figure convey the character that we see in Cybertron itself? Well, we don't often start off by looking at a figure that we are staring at in the eyes, or in this guy's case, his cockpit windows that do very much look like eyes. And I have to say that this figure's design, it really shows off that sleek little alien fighter jet mode that Sideways has, and I love all the differentiated parts that got dedicated either molded colors or color hits. Now, one thing about this character is that he does have these little tusks in the show, which are actually his robot mode horns, and I feel that on this figure they're a little bit more pronounced than they were in the animation model. And one of those ways that he does collapse up so neatly is, as you can see on the bottom here, basically all his robot mode stuff that is apparently robot mode is very nicely tucked under here, because you're never really going to be looking at it from this angle, right? You're going to be looking at it somewhere along the horizontal plane like we were before, or more one of these angled down shots. Which I have to address. Look at all the cool detailing, kind of the pattern on the wings, and how the gold and the silver kind of works together really well right here. I love how the orange just pops on this figure. But even small aesthetic details like this little bit that was on the original version. And yes, you are probably noticing that he does have an Autobot symbol, which don't worry, we will come back to that. And just like his pal Starscream, you can go ahead and plug in the Cyber key over here, which it itself is actually a really nice sculpted one with that Decepticon emblem, which does not correlate with this, but again, I promise we'll get back to that. Now, speaking about this top piece right here, is as you can see, if I was to go ahead and do this, that top piece doesn't come off, yet it, at the same time, doesn't take very much effort. And that's because if you look at the bottom here, you can see where certain parts of it plug in right here, and then right here. Now, I won't say this for all Cybertron Sideways, but on my copy, sometimes it doesn't feel like it very securely stays in there. And like this time, I kind of felt it do it. But most of the time, like I'll just try to kind of quickly put it on there, and then it'll come off, where I have to like reassure myself by doing that little test that we did earlier. But as you can see right here, it went on first try, and yeah, it's definitely not bad looking. Now, most of the time, we see this guy paired with the aforementioned Starscream, as Screamer did have his Cybertronian jet mode that he rocked throughout the entire show. So when we pull Screamer in here, you can see that he has a lot of blast effect capable ports on him here in vehicle mode. Even little niche things like his jet booster back here. However, looking at Sideways, he is kind of sans that. Now, very true, he does have these ports down here that I guess if you want to go ahead and put in blast effects here, then maybe you could make it look like it's helping him to take off vertically. Although, I mean, that's not really a thing with this guy. But yeah, I mean, when we kind of look over him, aside from those two, there's really not a lot going on. Now, in the show, I don't remember Sideways using energy weapons. I may just, because that's just off the top of my head, there may be an instance or two he does, but if he did so, it was very sparingly. And as we will see in robot mode also, this guy's main weapons are all melee based. There's no energy weapons. You have to pull them in from other figures to get that. However, that is just something that I noticed about our guy here. Now, for comparisons in vehicle mode, we could pull in car guys in their vehicle mode, or we could pull in SUV guys also. However, due to this guy's alternate mode being so alien, aside from Starscream, there's really only one other character that we can set him up against. And that, of course, is the ancient Autobot Vector Prime, who himself has a very non-Terran alternate mode. And I mean, obviously there's reasons why, but we can kind of see that he scales pretty well up against Sideways. I mean, he's a Voyager, this guy is a Deluxe, so there's not like too much of a size discrepancy. Plus, this guy gains a lot of height in robot mode that actually makes him not so disproportionate to Vector Prime, even though, like I just mentioned, here in vehicle mode, it's not that big of a discrepancy. However, did you know that there is a version of Vector Prime that shared the same 4 colors as Sideways? Well, it was this guy that we've actually taken a look at before on the channel, and this is Hasbro's version that they called the Galaxy Force Vector Prime. Now, obviously, because this guy's main color is black, we can see that it's more of a secondary color on Vector Prime, whereas kind of this goldish sand color is basically his main color. And they both share those pops of orange like we talked about earlier, but also they have highlights in silver. So, like, it's kind of crazy to me that these guys are sharing that same 4-color pattern, but like the ways that they both carried it out makes them so dynamically different. And that's kind of awesome that you can get away with it like that, because this version of Sideways is very faithful to the original. So, I mean, it's kind of cool that they were able to do this back in the day. And on our way to robot mode, I did want to go ahead and show you one thing that I did notice about this guy, is that while I do like the forward swept wings, you can go ahead and pull them off for transformation if you like. However, once you do that, you know what this kind of reminds me of? Is a flying soap boat, otherwise known as a sweep, which you can kind of see some very vague, just the kind of like the general shape of it. But apparently BotCon had the same idea because they used the original Sideways mold to make the sweeps. And you got to see those boys actually kept their wings on. Now, I do think this mold, being able to detach the wings and having this general shape, it lends a little bit more credence to that. So who knows, Hasbro down the line might go ahead and give us one of those sweep recolors. And so here our boy has finally reached his robot mode, and as sick as he looked in alternate mode, here as a robot, I mean, the details are awesome. If we go ahead and look at those nice gold feet he has, kind of the slender proportions, but they're not just so super scrawny. However, I do like this little aesthetic on his back. You can maybe view them as wings or maybe some sort of a split cape or whatever. You know, just use your imagination, kind of have fun with it. And I do like the aesthetic of how the arms are structured. That's really awesome. One thing that has always been key about this guy is he just had the, basically, it's kind of very Tigatron, Cheetor-esque, where basically the front of your alternate mode becomes your chest, even if it sticks out quite a bit like our guy here. However, despite that, we can kind of look at his head and you can see that his face is essentially just a giant visor, which is basically a aesthetic choice that Prime Soundwave would also one day come to possess. Speaking of Soundwaves, while he initially did hang out with Starscream in the series, he eventually abandoned him and started hanging out with Soundwave, who was also a resident of Planet X. And so for whatever the next part of Age of the Primes is, if they want to do another Prime that is not one of the 13, they can actually choose to do Logos Prime. And the reason I say that is because here, as you can see, Logos Prime actually uses the Cybertron Soundwave character model as his depiction. And if they gave us a black one, you could basically just use it as Sound Blaster, and that might be a backdoor into getting us a Cybertron Soundwave figure one day. Now, one thing you probably have noticed about this guy is that he is missing a few pieces of his alternate mode. So if we go ahead and attach the wings, they're actually meant to be stored on his legs, which kind of bulk him out a little bit, but not too terribly much. And I kind of like how that looks there, not too shabby. And then if we go ahead, here is his main weapon implement. Now in this show, he did have the ability to swap his faction symbol between Autobot and Decepticon. One way that he used to do that was by going ahead and plugging his Cyber Planet key in there, and then it would go ahead and do the swap. Now, how do we do that on this figure? Well, basically, it's just got this little slide lever that you can push up and down that will actually help you to go ahead and swap out the logos to whichever faction you want to do. Now also, whenever he would have his Cyber Planet key, it would go ahead and extend out this kind of 4-pronged pickaxe weapon, which, you know, he wielded it pretty effectively, I'm not gonna lie. So we basically just go ahead and flip out that 5mm port and attach it to his arm. And voila!
The handsome devil with the silver wings.
However, as you can see here in this picture, Sideways is not the only character to have come with a Cyber Planet key. I think in total, aside from maybe these four, the fifth one that I know of is this one right here that comes with Vector Prime. And even though I think it's just these five that we have so far, I don't think there's any more, that's actually kind of a cool aesthetic that they went ahead and included with some of these Cybertron figures. However, like I mentioned earlier, this guy's main weaponry is all melee based, which does not really bode well for Sideways because most of the Autobots that we have available from Cybertron are using energy weapons. Like these three in particular don't have melee weapons on them. However, you know who does? This guy right here. Now, to be fair, before we show him squaring off with Vector Prime, I do have to go ahead and mention that this is not his only weaponry. Matter of fact, if you want to, you could actually go ahead and have him wielding one of his wings as a weapon, or if you wanted to go a little bit harder, you could actually go ahead and attach the other one on the other side of his fist, and now our boy is literally rocking two bladed weapons, which, to be honest, at this point, Vector Prime better be on his guard. And I think that with Sideways having the option of either weapon layout that you want to use as him basically battling Vector Prime or anybody else, that kind of gives you a couple of different options because this guy is able to pose very, very decently. However, how does this guy's aesthetics look whenever he's alongside fellow Decepticons? Well, as you can see in this picture, here he is with Cannonball, and I think the guys look pretty nice with each other, which, if you guys did not know, yes, Cannonball actually originated as a repaint of Red Alert in the Cybertron era. So it's pretty cool that we have updated versions of both of these guys. However, I think the guy that, again, like we mentioned, he spent most of the series alongside was that of Starscream. You can see the boys look pretty decently standing here. Or like in this photograph where we can imagine that they're pretty much getting ready to take on some Autobots. And man, just I am loving how these guys look together. You guys know that I like Starscream. I mean, the guy was able to be not only the thumbnail of our top 10 list last year, but he actually ranked pretty decently on there as well. However, speaking of certain lists, if you guys saw the summer one, you guys know that I actually included the Transmetal version of Optimus Primal in that list. And one of the things that I brought out was the fact that I enjoyed his hoverboard mode. So I got to looking at Sideways and I'm like, can we kind of sort of imitate that with the accessories that he's got? Well, as you can see here, if you go ahead and reattach the wings down there on his legs and kind of fold up his feet in a certain position and basically just give him Ape Link's mace, then yeah, 100% this guy can pull that look off. However, I thought, well, what if you want to keep the wings on this guy's back? Well, as you can see here, it's not 100% like a Seeker, but giving him some black weapons that he robbed off one of the mini-bots, he can at least have the weapons on the arms and the wings somewhat in a similar position. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, I think that he looks pretty sick overall, especially this shot right here. I'm totally digging it. Basically, Sideways, he has a lot of screen accurate options. However, if you want to go ahead and kind of, you know, mess around with your figure a little bit and do something atypical, well, as these pictures can show, this guy can definitely pull that off. And so here you can see how he fits in with the overall group. Now I think this is pretty much all of the Cybertron figures that we've got, minus Metroplex, basically because I didn't feel like pulling him out of here for less than a minute of video. And I mean, essentially you might see up to his kneecaps or maybe just his ankles. And the other exception is, it depends on if you count that remold of the Siege Hound that they did as the CDT version of this hotshot. I don't have that version. We're either basically just missing one or two of the guys out of the shot is what I'm getting at. But I think overall, the general aesthetic of the Cybertron era, I think that across all these figures, no matter what line they came out in, it keeps that, and these guys look really good. You know, if they were doing Megatron Monday to counteract this Galaxy Optimus, That's going to be awesome, maybe like a Leo Breaker. One thing that I would like to see is if they go ahead and re-release this version of Vector Prime, which I think they are, instead of doing him in his Cybertron color scheme, I would love to see him doing this little color number like we looked at earlier. I would definitely buy that mold again if they did it like this right here. And then, of course, I think you guys know, like earlier, I really would like them to do a Cybertron version of Soundwave, and that would just be pretty awesome. So basically, everybody, that's all I had to tell you about the Cybertron version of Sideways. And until next time, we'll see you guys in another review.
Whoa! Those two are channeling enough energy to wipe out a small planet!
Well, I'm not sticking around to hear that, Groove. Let's warp our tails out of here.
We can't leave here without the Omega Lock. If we do, then we failed our planet, our people!
Let's do it! I think I see it.
I don't get it. Save yourself?
No way, brother. We're in this together.